The conference room smelled like artificial lemon and betrayal. I stood there with my research folder pressed against my chest like a shield, watching the head of Veridian BioSciences flip through 17 pages of data that I had bled for. 17 pages showing that rooftop hives could sustain pollinator populations deep in city centers, that abandoned buildings could become lifelines instead of eyesores, that bees, the most forgotten workers of our ecosystem, could be saved in the spaces no one else bothered to look. He closed the folder, set it on the table, and slid it back toward me. "Maya," he said, and he didn't even look up. "This is quixotic. You understand that, right? You want to fund a network of rooftop beehives in a city that doesn't care. You're a junior researcher with a degree from a state school. No offense." I felt my face go hot. I felt the other 3 people in that room stop breathing, waiting for me to crumble. "The board won't touch this," he continued. "It's not science. It's charity dressed up in data, and frankly, it's embarrassing to the firm. We're a biotech company, not a hippie commune." That word, embarrassing, landed like a slap, because I had heard it before, at the dinner table, at Thanksgiving, in the living room of the house I grew up in, where my mother once told me, with a kind of exhausted disappointment that cut deeper than anger, that she didn't know what she had done to deserve a daughter who chased insects instead of a real career. My father said nothing. He just laughed, that soft, dismissive laugh that said everything and nothing all at once. My brother called me the buzzing joke of the family. They weren't cruel people. That was the worst part. They genuinely believed they were helping me by being realistic. I took my folder. I walked out, and I never looked back at Veridian, but I carried that room with me every single day. I started with one hive on the roof of a condemned textile warehouse in the Northside Flats. The building was so abandoned that pigeons had claimed the upper floors, and the city had a standing demolition order. The owner let me use it for the cost of keeping vagrants off the property. I bought my first colony with a credit card I maxed out, and I read every book, every study, every whisper of research on urban apiculture, with the feverish focus of someone who has nothing left to lose. The first winter, I lost 30% of my colonies. I froze pipes in a rented basement trying to keep observation frames warm. I got stung so many times my doctor thought I was being attacked. I slept on a cot in that warehouse because I couldn't afford rent and equipment on the same budget. My mother called twice. I didn't answer. The second time, she left a voicemail asking if I was done with that bee thing yet. I almost was, more than once. But then spring came, and the linden trees bloomed along Prospect Avenue, and I watched my first colony, small, scarred, barely alive, send out a cloud of foragers into the golden morning. They spiraled outward in that ancient, impossible dance, finding food in a cityscape that science said couldn't sustain them. And I sat on that tar-covered roof with tears running down my face, and I whispered to those bees like they could hear me. I said, "We're going to prove them all wrong." It took 4 years. 4 years of grant applications that were rejected, of city council meetings where men in suits looked at me like I was selling something, of neighbors who thought I was insane until they tasted the honey and went quiet. I built the network hive by hive, rooftop by rooftop, transforming 12 blighted buildings into buzzing sanctuaries. I partnered with schools and food banks. I hired a team of young researchers who believed in the work the way I did, kids fresh out of graduate programs who looked at me and saw something I had never seen in myself, proof that it could be done. In year 5, Veridian BioSciences reached out. They had new leadership. The board had seen my published data they had refused to sponsor years earlier, and they wanted to collaborate. I told them I was busy. I told them my hives needed me. I told them the work didn't need their name on it anymore. But I didn't gloat. I had learned something in those years on those rooftops that was worth more than any vindication. I learned that the people who doubt you are not the ones who determine your worth. They are the ones who determine your hunger. And hunger, when you point it in the right direction, will take you further than any approval ever could. Last October, I received the Urban Ecology Prize, a national recognition for transformative environmental work in metropolitan spaces. I was standing on a stage in front of 800 people when I saw my mother in the third row. She had come alone. My father was sick, she told me later. My brother had a work conflict, but she was there. After the ceremony, she found me in the lobby. She was holding a small jar of honey, one of ours from the Prospect Street hive. I recognized the label. She had bought it online. She had been buying it for 2 years, she admitted. She had been reading every article about the network. She had watched me become someone she didn't recognize, and she didn't know how to reach across that distance. "You were right," she said. Her voice was small. Her hands were shaking. "We were wrong. We were so wrong, Maya." I wanted to tell her it was fine. I wanted to be the bigger person. But it wasn't fine. It had never been fine. And pretending it would have been a disservice to every night I spent alone on that rooftop, wondering if anyone would ever believe in me the way I believed in the bees. So I hugged her instead. I held on for a long time. And I said, "I know, Mom, I know." Because the truth is, the most powerful thing you can do when the world tells you you're nothing is build something worth remembering. Not for them, not even for the people who doubted you, for the version of yourself that never gave up, and for everyone who will come after you wondering if it's possible. It is. It absolutely is. And the bees, they're still flying, every single morning, out over a city that once forgot them, doing the work that keeps the whole world alive.